Hey everyone, and welcome to the last 30/30 of 2019, December 2019. Pat Reinhardt here from Conductor, and thank you guys so much for joining me. I know we're all heading out for the end of the year, but again, we're going to get into a bunch of stuff today. Let's look at what we're going to be talking about. So, I'm sure everyone has seen the news that Conductor is once again an independent entity. I want to just talk about that very briefly, as it relates to us, relates to the company, things of that nature, and just my take on it since I was so close to it. Then we're also going to talk about neural matching being part of local search results now, which is cool. BERT has gone international and now supports over 70 languages. Funny thing is that it didn't seem like any of the search liaison guys had any idea that was happening so quickly, so we'll talk about that. And then, per tradition, I am going to go back to my 2019 predictions and kind of gauge myself and judge myself harshly on how I did. And then, of course, we'll give my predictions for 2020. So let's get into it because we only have 30 minutes. Number one, WeWork and Conductor. So I've gotten a lot of questions on this over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, it's news. It's large news for our company. It's something that we are super excited about, but also just kind of want to go through, again. So as of right now, Conductor has become an independent entity. We are no longer owned by WeWork, which is very exciting, right? I was part of the team that originally, brought WeWork on as a customer, launched their global SEO campaign almost 4 years ago with a very small team that has now grown to over 10 people that we have dedicated to them. Through the last 20 months, which is just about how long we were part of WeWork, I have used this slide to start all of my presentations because, like I said, working for WeWork was an adventure and a positive one, mainly a positive one. I was proud to work for WeWork. Even though the news around the IPO went in a few different directions, and I'm sure everyone has their own opinions on the company, which is totally fair. I can tell you that the folks that we work with there are tremendously talented. There are thousands of people who work for WeWork who are supporting a very strong business, and I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to continue to service them. So that's the other thing, is that WeWork will continue to be part of our day-to-day lives. As we are still helping them run their SEO program. The team here is still helping them all over the world use our software. Learn more about SEO, get more out of their SEO program, which is very exciting. And for me personally, it's been a tremendous ride. When I heard the news that we would be spinning out, of course, very excited that Conductor is an independent entity again. When I came into Conductor 5 years ago, we were an independent entity, and now I just feel like we're going back to our roots. WeWork allowed us to do a tremendous amount of things. It allowed us to scale. It allowed us to invest in customer success, invest in engineering, invest in our product at a much more accelerated rate than we would have been able to. And for that, we are thankful, and I am certainly thankful. For the SEO program that we continue to help them run, we meet new people, every day. We work with new folks all over the world, and they're all great, and they're very supportive of this change. Through this time, everyone has been tremendously supportive, and we of course wish WeWork all the best, not just because that they continue to be a partner of ours, but because of the amazing people that continue to work there. Think of what you want in the news, that's totally fine, but there are amazingly talented people there who are kind, who are working towards a common goal, and they have a very sound business there that they're going to continue to grow. And I'm going to be rooting them on from the sidelines. Of course, we get to work. I still get to go over to HQ quite often and see everyone. But I wish WeWork all the luck in the world, and I know they have the same sentiment for us as an independent entity. I'm excited to get back to being in a scrappy startup environment. Not that we ever really left. I just don't think some things align there. But at the end of the day, Conductor is stronger than ever. WeWork allowed us to grow and scale, and I thank them for that. And it was one hell of a ride over the last 20 months, and I'm happy that we can continue to be part of their day-to-day, as we help them scale, continue to help them scale their SEO program. So that's my take on that. I'm kind of sad I don't get to use this slide anymore, but I'll keep it here as a relic, and I'll look back at it fondly over all the talks that I got to give. But let's talk about more SEO stuff. So going into one of the biggest things that came out over the last 30 days, A big update for the local algorithm, local search results. That neural matching is now part of the local search algorithm and local search results in general. So earlier in November, they began to use neural matching, and this was something that wasn't confirmed until after the last 30/30, which is why I'm bringing it up now. And for everyone to remember that neural matching is another layer of how Google presents its results to us. So it has its traditional ranking factors. I've gone through this on the show before, but then it also adds an extra layer of neural matching, which takes into account, so basically think of it as Google uses its traditional ranking factors to give you the top 10. Neural matching then looks at that top 10 and may mix those around based on the content and the content's relevancy to the particular query that a user is given. So it's not the same thing as BERT, but it is associated with it. So it has to do with language processing, but it's not exactly the same thing. But at the end of the day, a lot of people started to call this update the Bedlam update because that's what SEOs do. They name things. Everyone knows how I feel about that because I feel when you name an algorithm, it gives it more power than it deserves. But basically, what this does is just another way that Google can do a better job. Matching exact words and in a business name and in a business location. So I think this is a natural progression, right? They named it the November 2019 local search update, which of course is Google's standard. That they're doing right now, which is good. Again, kind of gets people away from naming things wacky if they're black and white animals and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, that has fully rolled out, as of early December, I believe. But that's something that should make everyone keep thinking about what they can do to make their whole local experience better and their whole site better. Again, I got a lot of questions over the last few weeks about this, mainly around, which is the same question. And again, I always have to take a step back and remember that not everyone has been in search for a long time. Some people are still learning about it and getting used to it. But still, the age-old question of what should I do about this, or how can I optimize to this algorithm update? And again, not to beat a dead horse, because all the fine folks who join me every month know that there's nothing that's not how we look at it anymore. It's not what can we do to optimize for this algorithm update. We can't do anything about any of that. We just have to take the kitchen sink approach. To kind of take that from Glenn Gabe. It's all about making your entire site and the experience, the holistic experience, as good as possible. And for local results, what that means is build citations, make sure your NAP information is normalized across all the aggregators, which is your name, your address, your phone number. Think about the way that you're doing your titles. Don't just put your business name as all the titles. We've actually done some tests over here, and that's not as effective as a lot of people say it is. I've had a lot of success with putting name and address as the name, but also to that point, you also don't want to over-optimize a title or description of a business and put like a bunch of keywords in there. Again, there are a lot of testing, and it's different in different industries and different for different types of businesses. But at the end of the day, it's not about just trying to stuff things in there. It's really about making sure things are put together, making sure they're taken care of, making sure they're not messy, making sure they're uniform, and making sure you're building those citations and you're monitoring them. A lot of times people ask me, well, what should I use to monitor my local presence? And it all depends on how many locations you have, right? If you have 5 locations, you can just do that through Google My Business. You can do it yourself, you can do it manually. But if you have 500 locations or 5,000 locations, you're probably going to want to use something like Yext that will help you manage all that, because it's very hard to keep up with. But also don't forget that there's a lot of other things that you can do as well. You can use Google Posts. You can use Google, a lot of stuff that goes along with, with the local, with local things. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where, this neural matching being added in to the local search algorithm is not surprising, as Google continues to move towards wanting to understand everything about a user's intent and what the intent of that query is for that particular person. This is just localizing that, and I think it's a natural progression, but also it's a trend, right? That's the trend that we're seeing Google going. Google wants to be the destination. Google wants to understand exactly what you're asking it so that it can serve you better results. And I don't, a lot of people are like, oh, this is just another thing that hurt my site. This is just another thing that I have to deal with. And honestly, if you didn't see this coming, or if you saw a negative impact from this, that's just another wake-up call, and that's just how I have started to view when these updates happen. It's not if, it's when, and we should always be thinking about what can we do to make our site the best that it possibly can. What can we do to make sure that even now, from a local perspective, are we paying enough attention to it? Are we doing enough? Or should we be creating more localized content? Are all of our titles uniform, or are they just, or am I trying too hard? And I think these are all the things that we have to take into account. And also, everyone should be following Google Search Liaison. Someone mentioned this to me the other day, that they update quite often what's going on, and it's great if you have Twitter, and I totally understand if you don't. I probably spend way too much time on Twitter, and I don't even tweet that much. I just watch things. I'm a voyeur. But for the most part, this really helps us, kind of keep track. This could really help you keep track of what's going on, really quickly. But for the most part, this is something that they'll continue to move on. They'll continue to roll out, and it's something that you should be aware of, but not something that you should be like chained to. Like, don't worry about if you got hit by something and you feel that your local presence was hurt during this time. Don't spend months or weeks going through trying to find the silver bullet of why. Just go back to the drawing board, make your local search presence better. And that's what you should be focused on. And that's really what we should be focusing on in general. And kind of moves into the next thing too, right? So BERT, as everyone knows, was the natural language processing update. Or technology that was, further integrated into Google, that was impacting about 10% of all English search queries. This again is just another aspect of Google trying to understand what the intent is of these searches that are coming in, and what is the intent of the person searching for it, so that they give you the best answer. The funny part about this one is that, back at SMX Paris or SMX in Paris, John Mueller actually said that BERT would not go international for like 6 months, right? And then this gentleman had pointed to an article that there was no official word from Google, but it looked like BERT was live in other languages. And so then Danny Sullivan, looked into it and said, it's only live in languages beyond English for featured snippets, okay? Not for web search results generally. That was his first response. But then he wrote back and said, actually, apparently it is out more broadly. I'll share more on Search Liaison shortly. He then jumped on Search Liaison and said that BERT, their new way for them to better understand language. Again, BERT is about natural language processing. Rolled out to over 70 languages worldwide, which is pretty cool. Again, it still only impacts 1 in 10 searches, so basically 10% of all searches, in those 70 languages. But it was, that came a lot sooner than even they knew. And you can see here they rolled out. And named all of the languages that it was. Spanish was one of them. But I think this tweet was one of the more interesting ones. Is that so someone of course called John out and said, hey, you said in SMX Paris that this would be like 6 months. Why is this happening sooner? And I don't think people understand that, like, John, Gary, and Danny don't make the decisions on when things roll out. They are the liaisons, between us and Google, right? They certainly have inside baseball on things, but for the most part, they don't make the decisions on when things roll out. Clearly, the engineers that were in charge of rolling this out were comfortable enough with the results and the tests that they were doing to just let it roll out. So that's another thing that that people have to understand, is that those three don't push the go live button on algorithm updates. They're just kept abreast of what's going on, and they help gain feedback from us, the community, to give back to the engineers, and also let us know when things are rolling out to avoid chaos, which is what we love to get into. But also, I love John Mueller because of statements like this. He's like quietly sarcastic. So for the most part, of course, this guy calls him out. He goes, "Hey, guess it was earlier than I guessed." Didn't really mention a specific time. So regardless of that, but I love that he said, "Would you have done anything differently?" And this goes back to the way that people think about this kind of stuff in general, and why it's wrong to think that way. A lot of the questions that I answer, or get asked rather, after an algorithm update is, again, what could I have done? What's the, what should I, how do I optimize for these things? What is this about links? Is this about content? Is this about page speed? Is this about some technical thing? Is this about indexing? Yada, yada, yada. And I think that that's us as SEO professionals, or people who are responsible for SEO, people people who are responsible around SEO need to stop thinking that way. And this is something that my opinion has grown stronger on over the last year or two. And this is that, people still come to me, this was a link update. Like, some people will argue with me, well, this was totally a link update. And it's like, no, it wasn't. It was just an overall kitchen sink update. Like, I don't, certainly there are some aspects, like when you look at a lot of the medic update and a lot of the other updates that were clearly targeted towards your money or your life content, within those updates, there were still there were still other areas of those updates that weren't just, targeted on that one area, right? Yes, that was a big part of it, probably 70% of that update, but it also impacted a lot of other stuff as well. I saw that impact like rich snippets. I saw that impact a lot of indexing things. I saw that impact a lot of other areas on sites. And I think that people still look at these updates as, well, what type of update was it? So I know what to do tomorrow, or I know what to tell my boss. And that is just the wrong way to think about it. And I think we all need to start thinking differently and think more of like, hey, listen, like, these things happen. I'm not going to spend a lot of time analyzing them. It's great that we get in-depth analyses on what was happening, what's going on. That's part of why this industry is awesome. That's part of why I like this industry. People have opinions. People argue, hopefully respectfully. But people do the analysis. But at the end of the day, we still have the vast majority of people who get locked up in analysis, and they don't spend enough time on just getting things done. They spend more time on figuring out what was wrong with the site. And like, I've had people who are spending months trying to find a silver bullet for a recent update, and I was like, you just got to move on, man. And I've said this on the program many times. We just have to move on from that. We spend way too much time, locked in that, and that's why SEO is still viewed as a line item, and why it's viewed largely as a commodity in a lot of companies, and something that's easy to get rid of or something that's easy to ignore. And I think if we start to change the way that we think, we can more easily change the way that other people within an organization think. And even though the importance of SEO has grown within a lot of companies, it's still not nearly where it needs to be. And that's on us. That's on the SEO community. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And also, I just love that John Mueller throws shade and throws fire at people. He's hysterical. So I always appreciate him there. So, getting back to with our last 10 minutes. Per tradition, I always like to go back to see what my predictions were for 2019 and see how I did. So let's see how bad or good I did. So, number one, I said that personalization and universal results would continue to grow. I think I can claim victory on this one. We've seen Google test many different things, universal results and result types over the last year. I think we've seen a lot stick. I really like the FAQ, schema, results that pop up now. There's been a lot of different things that they've tested and tried. And, of course, personalization definitely has grown. So I think I can claim victory on that one. I had a couple of people last year say, like, well, that's kind of a layup. I was like, well, that's fair. But that does not mean that I am wrong. So at the end of the day, I think I can claim victory on that one. Number two, we will see brands continue to consolidate web properties. 150% right. I have seen so many, companies, go in and continue to consolidate their websites. One of our awesome customers right now is in the process of consolidating 300 websites into one. Awesome people, huge project, a lot of fun to work on. But I've seen that trend of people getting rid of subdomains, people getting rid of vanity URLs, people getting rid of other types of domains that are coming in, and just consolidating business units that may have been in different areas or in different micro sites. I've seen that heading in the right direction, which is getting everything under one domain, especially for internationalization, efforts. So I applaud those folks, and I believe that I can claim victory on this one as well. This one I cannot. I can probably take half a victory on this one, but definitely half a loss. So more devices will become voice enabled, thus expanding voice search as a necessity. This one's funny because my view on voice search declined very early at the beginning of last year when I started to realize that Google and Amazon were not going to release a way that would make voice search measurable. I honestly thought last December that in January or February we would have access to some sort of data, real hard data, and some kind of value to a voice query that would allow us to claim victory on certain terms. That has not happened. I did a whole presentation in Brighton earlier this year about how voice search, is largely a distraction and will continue to be a distraction, which it is and it will. And that like most voice searches are not searches at all; they're voice commands. But at the end of the day, did more devices become voice enabled? Totally. So I was right about that, I feel. But this one was kind of a swing and a miss, especially since I pivoted really, really quickly after the new year. Once I realized that wasn't going to happen, it was really dependent on. I really thought something was going to come out in Search Console or something that we would get some sort of data, more like hard data around voice search. That didn't happen. I was totally wrong. So swing and a miss on that one. And then the last one. The idea that search data can be used for other things, than just search will gain steam. I will claim a soft victory on this as well. As we've gone around and talked about this, and as I've talked to a lot of other folks in the industry, I do see this trend heading in that direction. I do see people using search data in creative ways, not just for, because I don't want people to just look at SEOs and search data as, SERP data and ranking data and things of that nature. You can use it to look for demand of your business in different areas. We've done that with other companies. We've done that with companies over the last year. You can use it to make other business critical decisions on which way you should be thinking. So I think that I can claim a soft victory. There's a long way to go on this one, but it's definitely something that I've seen growing in the conversations that I've had. So with that said, 3 out of 4 isn't bad. I'll take that. I think last year I did okay as well. I think I got 3 out of 5 last year, so I'll take those. So let's look at 2020. What do I think is going to be happening here? So, number one, the kitchen sink approach will continue to prove itself. I strongly believe in this. This is starting to become my mantra. Glenn Gabe kind of coined this term. He said it's the kitchen sink approach, that you're paying attention to your entire site. You're not just paying attention to one aspect of it. Again, I think people spend way too much time on certain things. I think link building is one of them. I think doing analysis into certain algorithm updates is another one of them. I think people spend too much time testing. I think people do a lot of tests and don't take enough action. Again, personal opinions, everyone's entitled to them. SEO is a game of opinions. That's why I love it. But I do see this growing trend that people and companies who take care of the holistic position of their websites and not just one aspect at a time necessarily, or at least have a plan for the holistic and not just focusing on one thing for very long periods of time, tend to do better. And this is, I feel very strongly that this is the way that our industry is going, and I think we're going to continue to see that trend move into 2020. Let's look at the next one. Zero-click searches, which horrifies me every single day, will continue to rise as Google becomes the destination. This is something we all should be very, very aware of. We have had this conversation before on here, or I've ranted about this before on here. That zero-click searches, will continue to rise. As we know, Rand did that study that back in June, I believe, half of all searches resulted in no click. Google wants to become the destination as CPCs continue to rise. Businesses are having a harder time investing. They are having a harder time growing. But at the end of the day, this is something that I believe will continue to trend in this direction. I would not be surprised to see Google testing the ability to buy things directly from the SERPs in the very near future. Again, they are becoming that they want to be the destination. They don't necessarily want to send people to your website. And I think we're going to continue to see that trend grow, which of course is scary, because that really impacts every single person who's listening to the program. This is something that we need to pay attention to, and this is something that we need to, have a plan for. And that kind of moves into the next two that, a lot of people had plans for voice search this year, myself included. But, as I pivoted away fairly quickly at the beginning of this year, I do believe that voice search will continue to be a distraction. I still have several several conversations about voice search every week. And it's not that they're bad conversations. It's not that they're not cool to think about the future and think about futurist type stuff. But until we have some form of measurement, which I honestly don't know if that's going to come this year even. I would love for it to. I hope next year we're all sitting here and I'm pulling this exact slide up and I say, hey, I was wrong about this. We actually have a way to measure, what people are searching for through voice, which I think would be great. But I do believe that it will continue to largely be a distraction into next year, and that's something to be aware of as well. And one thing that I'm taking a little bit of a shot at is that on mobile mainly, and this started to kind of dawn on me in mobile, where when Google switched to the cards and the favicons for all the results, which I like, and I've said that before on the show, that I do like that they moved to that design. I think it's a lot easier to see. I think it's a lot easier to understand. It's a lot easier in general just to know what the different results are, or where the different results are. But one thing that I did mention is that the ad favicon blends in really easily to the other favicons. You can't really tell that it says ad that much. And I just have this feeling that Google is going to test putting paid search results throughout the SERP and not just at the top anymore, or in bottom rather, right at the top. Because right now, I know that you see the paid result right there when you go on the mobile, and that takes up, you got to give a good swipe to get there. I do believe that next year, or I wouldn't be surprised if next year Google started to test putting paid ads throughout the SERP. So within, like maybe one paid result, 3 organic results, one paid result, or 2 paid results, 2 organic results, and start to disperse them throughout the SERP to get people to click on them more, because it's really hard to tell that they're ads. The black favicon that just says ad, it's really hard to distinguish. So I think that, and and when you look at the second one I said, that Google becoming a destination, I think that kind of plays into that, and I think we're going to see a lot more of transactional type tests from Google in the next year. And that's something that I think we all should be aware of and be thinking of. So those are my predictions for 2020. We'll see how we did 12 months from now. Hopefully, hopefully I'll do okay. Have a pretty good track record over the last 4 years. But that's just like taking all the conversations I've had over the year, all the trends that I've seen, all the analyses that I've read, all the rants that I've done, all the arguments I've had. I feel like that's the direction that we're going to go. And with that, everyone, C3 is almost here. May is not as far away as it feels, even though it's freezing cold out here in New York. So May 11th through 13th, definitely come to C3. We're really excited that we're doing the conference. Every year, when I was a customer, this was my favorite. This was one of my favorite conferences to go to. It's where I got my start speaking. Seth was the first person to throw me on stage, which was probably terrible at the time, terrible idea at the time. But I never looked back. And every year that we do it, C3 continues. Even though I'm a conductor and I might be a little biased, C3 continues to be one of my favorite conferences every year that I go to, that I get to speak at, I get to participate in. If you're interested, and you should be, go to c3.conductor.com and get your tickets now. And with that, everybody, the end is here of the year. Happy holidays to everybody on the phone, whatever you celebrate. For me, I'm going to go take a couple of weeks off. I think y'all should do the same if your company allows. I think it's well deserved, especially in this industry. SEO is difficult. I hope everyone has had a great year, a prosperous year, a traffic-filled year, a conversion-filled year. We had a really, really interesting year here at Conductor. I'm excited to kick off 2020 as an independent entity. We're back to being Scrappy Conductor, which I'm really, really excited about. And for everyone who celebrates, happy holidays, and I will see you next month in 2020.